Hey guys, tonight we drift quietly back to a time long before the comforting hum of electric toothbrushes or the minty freshness of your favorite mouthwash. Picture yourself gently floating along the banks of the Nile River beneath a dusky sky, splashed with stars in a place and time where dealing with a toothache meant more than just scheduling an appointment on your smartphone. Tonight we wander gently through ancient Egypt, where toothaches were common enough that even pharaohs occasionally winced during royal banquets. Before we ease fully into this sleepy journey through history, a quick reality check with today's modern comforts. Far out of reach, you probably wouldn't survive this sorry to burst your time-traveling dreams. But no worries tonight, you're just an observer safely cocooned beneath your cozy blankets. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and don't forget, leave a comment below sharing where you're listening from and your local time. I'm always curious. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your gentle adventure in an average Egyptian village, comfortably settled into the rhythms of daily life. Imagine yourself as a weary traveler sitting on the edge of a mud brick porch, feeling the afternoon sun easing into a golden evening glow. The steady murmurs of villagers trading goods blend with the distant lazy calls of river birds. All is serene well, almost. Suddenly, a soft groan from nearby interrupts your relaxation. Glancing casually, you notice an elderly neighbor gently pressing a palm to his cheek, his eyes squinting slightly. Ah, yes, the universal language of toothaches. You offer a sympathetic nod, recognizing that even thousands of years ago, toothaches knew no boundaries. In ancient Egypt, dental issues were annoyingly common. Without fluoride toothpaste or dental floss, though the Egyptians had their own gentle ways of tooth cleaning more on that later teeth, inevitably decayed. Bits of gritty sand and bread, tiny stones accidentally ground into grain and diets, heavy in dates, honey, and bread, all these created the perfect conditions for toothaches. And here you thought your dentist was exaggerating when she warned you about candy. But ancient Egyptians, ever resourceful and optimistic, refused to let tooth pain ruin their sunny outlook on life. To handle these persistent nuisances, they had developed an array of gentle, if slightly quirky, dental treatments. Some involved herbs and sweet concoctions from their kitchens. Others leaned heavily on magical charms or soothing prayers whispered gently in temple courtyards. Perhaps most intriguing was their network of gentle dentists, a loosely defined group ranging from specialized healers with genuine dental skills to local medicine men offering softer, more magical approaches. Dentistry, as you'd recognize it today, didn't really exist. No reclining chairs or bright overhead lamps here, just softly spoken reassurances, fragrant herbal pastes, and whispered chants, invoking gods with reassuringly friendly names. Historians still argue whether these remedies genuinely worked, or if they simply gave comfort through placebo effects. But honestly, after suffering through a relentless toothache, who wouldn't gladly accept even the softest whisper of relief? Your elderly neighbor, meanwhile, rises slowly and shuffles over toward a simple mud brick structure shaded by palm fronds. This humble hut tucked gently behind the village market serves as the local dentist's office, though calling it an office feels too formal. It's more like stepping into your grandmother's cozy kitchen, except here you're greeted with bowls of fragrant pastes, bundles of herbs drying overhead, and perhaps an amulet or two dangling gently from the rafters. Inside the healer, a soft-spoken, middle-aged woman with kind eyes greets your neighbor warmly. Her gentle hands deftly mix a paste of crushed cumin seeds and honey, forming a thick, aromatic balm. You quietly marvel at how calmly she works. She dips a slender reed into the paste and gently applies it to your neighbor's aching tooth, softly murmuring prayers to Isis, goddess of healing and compassion. The man visibly relaxes the tension draining gently from his shoulders. Maybe it's placebo, maybe it's magic, but either way it seems to help. Nearby, another villager, a younger man nervously twisting a linen cloth in his fingers, awaits his turn. The toothache apparently respects neither age nor status. You overhear the healer soothingly reassure him, explaining how chewing on certain plant leaves or roots can ease his pain until it naturally subsides. No invasive drills or intimidating needles here, just quiet patience and gentle persuasion. Stepping back outside, you wander slowly along the dusty road as twilight gently settles in. The Nile murmurs softly, a timeless lullaby accompanying your thoughts. Across the village, other small dramas unfold gently, children playing cooks, simmering evening meals over glowing embers, and yes, probably a few more toothaches, quietly brewing beneath calm facades. You pause to ponder the quiet strength and resourcefulness of these ancient Egyptians. Without modern conveniences, they calmly confronted daily discomforts like persistent toothaches with patience, innovation, and gentle humor. Perhaps tonight, as you rest comfortably beneath your own familiar blankets, you'll find a newfound appreciation for the modern toothbrush, patiently waiting beside your sink. Now, with night gently draping itself over the village lanterns, flicker softly to life. Families gather quietly indoors, evening routines softly unfolding like petals at sunset. You glance once more toward the dentist's hut, its doorway glowing warmly with gentle lamplight, a reassuring beacon in the gathering darkness. Just before drifting onward through our sleepy historical journey, you smile gently to yourself, grateful your toothache tonight is only imaginary. But remember, should you ever find yourself inexplicably transported back to ancient Egypt, though, let's be honest, your chances of surviving this comfortably are slim, you can rest assured the gentle Nile dentists have a paste, a prayer, and perhaps a small, reassuring amulet waiting patiently for you. With the gentle night fully embracing the Nile Valley, you quietly drift toward a softly lit corner of ancient Egyptian life, one shaped not by warriors, kings, or elaborate temples, but by humble papyrus scrolls. In the soothing glow of an oil lamp, an elderly scribe meticulously dips his sharpened reed pen into dark ink, carefully forming each graceful hieroglyph. You lean closer, listening to the quiet scratch of reed against papyrus, a rhythmic whisper that soon blends into your relaxed breathing. These scrolls, crafted carefully by ancient healers and scribes, hold centuries of wisdom, painstakingly compiled remedies meant to ease the everyday discomforts of Egyptian life. Tonight, of course, we're gently exploring one specific and persistent annoyance: the stubborn toothache. So let's peer softly over the scribe's shoulder and uncover the gentle secrets hidden in these delicate texts. One of the most fascinating of these ancient documents is the Eber's Papyrus, gently unrolled across a simple wooden desk before your scribe. Dating back nearly 3,500 years, it's an ancient Egyptian medical encyclopedia. Think of it as Wikipedia, if Wikipedia smelled faintly of herbs and papyrus and had been edited by a few overly enthusiastic priests. Among its quiet pages, you'll find treatments for just about every ailment imaginable, including our famously pesky toothaches. As your scribe pauses, his ink-stained fingers gently brushing across the parchment, you glimpse the graceful hieroglyphs describing toothache remedies. Some of these cures sound soothingly logical even today. Honey, for example, featured prominently its antibacterial properties, gently hinted at centuries before science officially confirmed them. Honey combined thoughtfully with cumin or dates created a sticky balm designed to calm irritated gums. It probably wasn't great for avoiding cavities, but at least it made toothaches taste better. Yet, nestled quietly among these logical treatments, you also notice slightly more mystical cures. One section describes how a careful healer might gently recite spells over the aching tooth, because clearly your tooth just needed a good pep talk. The Egyptians deeply believed in magic as a practical part of life. To them, a gentle whisper of enchantment or prayer was as comforting and effective as a modern-day ibuprofen. The scribe, meanwhile, moves on to another scroll, this one even older and more fragile, delicately rolled and tied with a soft linen ribbon. Historians still debate whether these older documents contain truly effective treatments or merely placebo comfort. Either way, Egyptians found genuine reassurance in these ancient texts. This particular scroll contains a remedy calling for the healer to gently massage the aching tooth with freshly mashed figs, honey, and ochre. Ochre, a clay pigment, may seem odd, but Egyptians used it commonly for its believed magical and therapeutic qualities. Who knew that mud mixed gently with sweet fruit paste might be considered the perfect cure for tooth pain? The papyrus whispers its secrets as your scribe moves gently onward, revealing more unusual treatments. One of the quirkiest involves applying finely ground barley mixed with oil and carefully placed against the tooth, effectively creating a soft, doughy poultice. It might not eliminate cavities, but it probably provided some comforting pressure relief. At least you'd taste like freshly baked bread, which feels oddly appropriate in a civilization that cherished bread almost as much as it did pyramid building. As your scribe gently pauses to stretch his cramped fingers, you notice him reaching carefully for a small wooden box on his desk. Inside rests a selection of aromatic herbs and spices, dried mint, cumin seeds, and frankincense. Egyptians knew well the gentle power of aromatherapy, subtly understanding that pleasant scents could soothe nerves as effectively as physical cures soothed toothaches. The scribe selects a few cumin seeds, chewing them slowly to freshen his breath and calm his gums after a long day of careful writing. Nearby, you imagine villagers doing exactly the same. After all, these ancient scrolls weren't only theoretical, they were practical living documents gently guiding Egyptians through daily discomforts and minor pains. Another softly illuminated scroll, now spread gently across the desk, offers instructions for mixing coriander with wine. Egyptians didn't just love wine at parties, they saw it as medicinal too. Coriander seeds, mildly antiseptic and gently aromatic, were infused in wine and held in the mouth as a soothing rinse. Maybe ancient dentists weren't so far off from today's antiseptic mouthwashes, just with fewer minty aftertastes and more cheerful buzzes. As the night deepens, your elderly scribe finally sets aside his reed pen, gently sealing away his precious scrolls. His eyes softly close, his breathing settling into slow, rhythmic waves. Quietly, you realize he's drifted off to sleep, perhaps dreaming of fragrant herbs, gentle magical chants, and papyrus scrolls, whispering softly their wisdom across centuries. Stepping quietly back outside into the cool, moonlit courtyard, you reflect gently on these ancient scrolls. They offer more than just quirky remedies. They remind us how ancient Egyptians calmly faced life's persistent discomforts. Through quiet wisdom, gentle humor, and patient practicality, they navigated toothaches, aches, and pains with remarkable serenity. Tonight, as you prepare to drift deeper into sleep yourself, perhaps you'll carry with you a bit of that gentle wisdom, knowing that life's annoyances, whether toothaches or more metaphorical aches, might be soothed by a little patience, gentle magic, and perhaps a touch of honey. And who knows? Maybe next time your modern dentist scolds you gently about flossing, you'll smile knowingly, remembering a time when figs, cumin, and softly whispered spells were perfectly acceptable dental care. As you softly step away from the scribes and their papyrus scrolls, you find yourself drifting gently into the cozy heart of an ancient Egyptian kitchen. Moonlight streams quietly through small window slits, illuminating shelves lined with clay jars filled with dates, honey, and aromatic spices. The warm, comforting fragrance instantly soothes you, wrapping around your senses like your favorite blanket on a chilly evening. Tonight, this kitchen isn't bustling with activity. Instead, it's quiet and still peaceful, in a way only a kitchen after hours can be. The hearth fire glows gently, casting faint, flickering shadows that dance slowly across mud brick walls. You breathe deeply, inhaling faint aromas lingering from the day's cooking, the sweetness of dried figs, a whisper of honey, and the unmistakably comforting scent of freshly baked bread. These humble ingredients, so common in everyday Egyptian life, weren't merely pantry staples. For ancient Egyptians, the line between food and medicine was pleasantly blurred. That jar of honey wasn't just for sweetening tea, it also provided gentle relief from tooth pain. Those dried dates, deliciously sticky, became an essential ingredient in soothing dental remedies. Even bread, so soft and ordinary, had a place in Egyptian toothache cures, though admittedly it might have helped cause those toothaches in the first place. You gently run your fingers over one of the clay jars, feeling its rough texture beneath your touch. Ancient Egyptians had an intuitive understanding of the healing properties in everyday food items. Honey, for example, was a cornerstone of their remedies. Egyptians believed deeply in honey's powers, not just because it tasted wonderful, but because it seemed to genuinely soothe pain and infection. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians knew exactly why honey worked so well. But modern science confirms their gentle intuition, honey's antibacterial properties made it an ideal ingredient for soothing sore gums and calming irritated teeth. Imagine yourself quietly observing an ancient Egyptian healer preparing a honey-based remedy. You watch closely as she carefully scoops thick golden honey into a small clay bowl, gently mixing it with finely ground cumin seeds. Her movements are practiced steady and comforting, like watching your grandmother baking on a sleepy Sunday afternoon. She then softly blends in crushed dates, forming a sweet, sticky paste designed to calm a throbbing tooth. You gently chuckle to yourself. Even thousands of years ago, Egyptians clearly understood one universal truth. If you must endure toothache treatments, it helps if they're tasty. You briefly wonder why your dentist today can't offer similar sweet, comforting options instead of minty gels and intimidating syringes. Nearby, another healer quietly prepares a different remedy, one slightly more unusual, but no less gentle. Using dried figs, she mashes them slowly and methodically, blending them carefully with barley flour and olive oil until a thick paste forms. Figs prized not just for their sweetness, but also their gentle anti-inflammatory properties provided mild relief to aching teeth and inflamed gums. Egyptians often pressed this comforting fig paste gently against painful teeth, allowing the soothing ingredients to seep softly into irritated tissues. As you watch this healer working quietly, you notice her methodical calmness. Every movement is precise, yet unhurried. You almost envy the simplicity and tranquility of this gentle dental care. No harsh drills, glaring lights, or clinical white coats. Just quiet reassurance, gentle hands, and the comforting presence of familiar kitchen ingredients. Another clay jar nearby piques your curiosity, filled with tiny dried coriander seeds. Egyptians believed coriander to be soothing and antiseptic qualities, especially valuable for toothaches. The healer gently crushes a handful of these seeds, mixing them with wine in a small bowl. Wine, with its subtle numbing effect, provided gentle relief when used as a mouth rinse. A healer might instruct patients to hold this coriander-infused wine softly in their mouths, letting the herbal liquid gently calm their irritated teeth. It may not have been mouthwash in the modern sense, but it certainly offered a pleasant distraction from tooth pain. Of course, not every Egyptian kitchen remedy was entirely comforting or logical. Some ancient recipes suggested chewing garlic cloves or raw onions to alleviate tooth pain. Garlic and onions do have antibacterial properties, but as you picture yourself obediently chewing raw garlic to soothe your aching tooth, you can't help but smile at the irony. At least ancient Egyptian dentists didn't have to worry about polite small talk, while their patient's breath quietly warded off evil spirits, and probably their neighbors too. But Egyptians weren't overly concerned about bad breath. They cared more deeply about genuine relief. The pungent garlic or onion juice provided mild numbing and antiseptic effects, gently easing inflammation around sore teeth. Sure, it might not have smelled sweetly comforting like honey or dates, but Egyptians were practical. Relief was relief, even if it came with mildly questionable breath afterward. As you quietly step back from these gentle kitchen preparations, you softly ponder the ancient wisdom behind these pantry remedies. Egyptians understood intuitively something we often overlook today, that everyday comforts, familiar ingredients, gentle aromas, and the quiet reassurance of simple rituals could ease more than just physical pain. They provided comfort, reassurance, and perhaps even a touch of gentle humor to soften life's annoyances. You pause briefly at the kitchen doorway, glancing once more at the gentle glow of the hearth, the neatly lined jars, and the quiet dignity of these ancient remedies. As your eyelids gently grow heavier, you begin to appreciate the quiet genius of the ancient Egyptians' masters of using simple, comforting ingredients to calmly navigate life's small, persistent pains. Tonight, nestled warmly in your modern bed, perhaps you'll dream gently of golden honey-sweet figs and fragrant coriander, quiet reminders from thousands of years ago that comfort often lies closer than we imagine. And next time you're sipping tea sweetened with honey or savoring a fresh fig pastry, you might quietly thank those gentle ancient Egyptians for their timeless kitchen wisdom. You drift gently now away from cozy kitchens and softly humming healers, carried on a quiet breeze toward the intriguing world of Egyptian amulets. The moon hangs low, casting a silver glow across the Nile, illuminating tiny clay huts and sleepy villages. Everything feels distant and dreamy, exactly as it should in your late-night historical journey. In a small home, tucked gently beneath towering palms, you notice an artisan quietly at work. The soft glow of an oil lamp flickers warmly across his cluttered workspace, revealing a careful assortment of delicate charms laid out on soft linen cloths. He leans forward, eyes squinted, in gentle concentration, slowly carving intricate patterns into a small piece of turquoise. Each tiny etching is careful, purposeful, imbued with quiet meaning. Amulets to ancient Egyptians weren't just decorative pieces. They believed these small, gentle charms had genuine protective powers, capable of quietly influencing life's challenges, including toothaches. Egyptians wore amulets daily, trusting their subtle magic would quietly shield them from misfortune, illness, or the gentle annoyance of everyday pains. As you watch the artisan carefully carve, you notice familiar symbols emerge, tiny images of gods like Isis and Horus gods, known for compassion, healing, and protection, appear gently beneath his steady fingers. Other amulets depict animals sacred to Egyptians, creatures believed to carry quiet yet powerful healing energies. The delicate figure of a cat, calm and watchful, might subtly ward off dental pain, while a crocodile's fierce yet protective form could gently deter evil spirits, believed to cause toothaches. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians genuinely believed amulets had supernatural power, or if they merely appreciated the comforting reassurance these gentle charms offered. Either way, Egyptians happily embraced amulet dentistry, blending quiet spirituality with gentle practicality. For them, an amulet wasn't just superstition, it was a softly comforting presence, quietly whispering reassurance against pain and discomfort. You lean in gently, noticing the artisan carefully finishing an amulet shaped like a miniature tooth. Its tiny curves and delicate proportions make you smile softly, an ancient equivalent, perhaps, of today's smiling cartoon teeth in dental offices. Egyptians believed such specific tooth-shaped amulets provided focused, gentle protection against dental problems. Wearing this tiny charm around the neck or wrist subtly reassured the wearer that toothaches would stay quietly distant, at least in theory. Other amulets were more abstract, relying gently on symbolism. The Eye of Horus, for example, a symbol Egyptians associated with protection and healing, was incredibly popular. Egyptians wore these charms confidently trusting their quiet presence would soothe everything from toothaches to the evil eye. Even today, the Eye of Horus remains recognizable proof of its quiet endurance through millennia. The artisan now gently polishes a small amulet carved from deep blue lapis lazuli, a precious stone Egyptians associated with healing. Its gentle blue hue reminds you softly of calm waters, serene skies, and the quiet tranquility Egyptians sought in moments of discomfort. Holding this amulet, Egyptians believed its subtle energies would flow softly into their bodies, gently easing pain and discomfort. Amulet craftsmanship required patience, skill, and genuine care. Artisans carefully selected materials believed to hold gentle healing properties. Turquoise for calming inflammation, jasper for easing pain, lapis lazuli for general health and protection. These quiet choices weren't random. Egyptians carefully studied the perceived energies of each stone, blending them thoughtfully into their daily lives. The artisan gently places his finished amulet aside, beginning work on another, a small scarab beetle softly carved from deep green jade. Scarabs symbolized renewal and healing, their quiet symbolism reassuring Egyptians that even persistent aches like tooth pain would eventually pass. Maybe it was optimism, maybe gentle philosophy, but Egyptians found genuine comfort in these humble beetles. Even pharaohs wore amulets, though theirs tended toward luxurious gold and precious stones. Tutankhamun himself rested gently in his tomb, adorned with over 100 amulets, quietly safeguarding his journey into eternity. Though you're not exactly planning a royal tomb anytime soon, you can't help but gently appreciate the comforting idea of wearing such reassuring charms, even if only symbolically. Amulet dentistry was more than superstition. It represented a gentle philosophical approach to life's inevitable discomforts. Egyptians knew pain was unavoidable, yet believed softly in their power to mitigate it through quiet, reassuring symbols. Whether or not you personally believe a tiny charm can ease your toothache, you have to admit the idea feels wonderfully comforting, quietly optimistic, and delightfully human. Before leaving the artisan's cozy workspace, you notice him gently setting aside his tools, stretching quietly in his chair. His eyes slowly drift closed, his breathing steady, calm, and relaxed, perhaps dreaming softly of protective gods, soothing amulets, and quietly vanishing toothaches. Outside again, beneath the gentle glow of the stars, you softly ponder the quiet wisdom behind these ancient charms. Egyptians didn't necessarily believe an amulet alone would cure their toothache. Rather, they trusted the quiet power of reassurance, optimism, and gentle symbolism to ease life's discomforts. Their faith in these tiny tokens reflects a universal human truth. Sometimes comfort lies as much in belief and hope as in tangible solutions. Tonight, as you ease gently towards sleep, Perhaps you'll carry with you a bit of this quiet optimism. You might imagine yourself softly wearing an amulet, an Eye of Horus perhaps, or a soothing lapis stone, quietly comforting you against life's small annoyances. And maybe tomorrow you'll look at your modern-day lucky charm or favorite necklace, a little differently, seeing in it the gentle wisdom and quiet reassurance of those ancient Egyptian artisans. Now breathing slowly and deeply, you feel yourself drifting further along the gentle currents of history, carried softly onward toward deeper relaxation and quiet dreams. And as you go, you carry gently within you the soothing reassurance of those tiny amulets, a quiet reminder that comfort sometimes is as simple as a gentle symbol, softly worn, quietly believed. Drifting gently from amulet workshops, you find yourself wandering softly toward Egypt's tranquil temples, places where soothing prayers and gentle chants offered quiet comfort in a world filled with everyday discomforts. The moon hangs heavy and full, casting silver shadows over sandstone columns carved carefully with hieroglyphs that seem to whisper softly as you pass by. Inside the temple's serene courtyard, soft incense wafts slowly upward, curling gently toward the stars. You inhale deeply, feeling your shoulders gently relax your breathing. Slow your mind, ease further into tranquility. Here, surrounded by statues of calming gods, Isis, Hathor, and Thoth, you sense deeply how temples served as havens of comfort, quiet places Egyptians visited when life's small pains became too persistent. As you step further inside, you notice a temple priest softly lighting small lamps, their warm glow gently illuminating painted walls, depicting scenes of healing rituals. His movements are careful, methodical, almost hypnotically soothing. Egyptians trusted temple priests not only for spiritual guidance, but for practical healing as well. Toothaches, of course, were no exception. When a toothache grew stubborn, when kitchen remedies or amulets failed, Egyptians quietly turned to priests, trusting their gentle prayers to soothe away pain. Priests weren't dentists in the modern sense. Instead, they offered spiritual comfort through gentle chants, quiet prayers, and careful rituals, methods you might find charmingly quaint, though to Egyptians they were profoundly reassuring. They believed toothaches often resulted from evil spirits or angry gods, a surprisingly relatable thought when your tooth is throbbing at 3 a.m. Egyptians sought the priests' softly whispered words, believing they could quiet those unseen forces causing their pain. You observe the priest carefully preparing his quiet space, arranging small offerings, bread, honey, and wine, before an altar dedicated to Isis, goddess of healing and compassion. Egyptians deeply loved Isis for her gentle strength, motherly kindness, and willingness to soothe everyday troubles. They believed she offered particular comfort to those suffering from dental pains, gently protecting her devotees from persistent toothaches. Nearby, you notice villagers patiently waiting their turn, quietly seated along the temple's cool stone walls. In the calm of this sacred space, no one rushes or frets. Instead, there's a peaceful acceptance, a trust in the priest's quiet methods, a confidence that gentle prayers might relieve pain as effectively as herbs or poultices. A priest approaches an elderly woman softly murmuring a prayer. You catch fragments of his gentle words, invocations to Isis, quiet reassurances that relief is close at hand. The woman visibly relaxes her features, softening the pain slowly easing from her expression. Whether genuine divine intervention or simple psychological reassurance, the quiet result is clear comfort has arrived softly and surely. Historians still argue whether these temple rituals genuinely alleviated physical symptoms or merely provided gentle emotional comfort. Either way, Egyptians clearly valued the priest's calm presence and soothing prayers. For them, spiritual reassurance was as real and tangible as herbal remedies or physical treatments. Another priest gently chants a hymn dedicated to Hathor, goddess of joy, love, and healing. Hathor, Egyptians believed, could bring quiet comfort to even the most stubborn toothaches. Her temples often included quiet corners, specifically designed for soothing rituals, small niches softly lit filled with gentle incense and whispered prayers. Visiting these quiet spaces, Egyptians felt deeply cared for, gently reminded they weren't alone in their discomfort. You pause quietly, leaning against a smooth temple column, absorbing the serene atmosphere. This gentle blend of spirituality and practicality feels wonderfully reassuring, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful medicine lies in comfort, empathy, and softly whispered words. Nearby, the priest gently sprinkles sacred water from a small bowl onto the elderly woman's forehead. This subtle act symbolizes purification, healing, and renewal. You smile gently, recognizing how these quiet, symbolic gestures carry genuine power even across thousands of years. After all, who hasn't felt soothed by a quiet touch, a softly whispered reassurance, or the calming presence of someone who cares? The priest now gently addresses a younger villager, a farmer perhaps, whose tense expression suggests a particularly stubborn toothache. The priest quietly reassures him, reminding him of Thoth, the wise god of wisdom and medicine. Egyptians trusted Thoth to bring clarity and relief through gentle, rational methods. Perhaps the farmer's toothache, stubborn and persistent, needed a god of reason and calm reassurance. You imagine the farmer leaving the temple later, comforted by the priest's gentle logic and quiet prayers, his pain softened by the temple's serene atmosphere. Outside again, beneath the tranquil moonlight, you reflect gently on the quiet power of these temple rituals. Egyptians understood deeply something often overlooked today, that comfort and reassurance, gently delivered, can profoundly ease physical pain. They believed in the gentle strength of empathy, spirituality, and quiet compassion to soothe life's persistent annoyances. Tonight, as you ease further towards sleep, perhaps you'll carry some of this gentle wisdom with you. Maybe you'll find comfort imagining yourself quietly seated in a tranquil temple, soothed by softly murmured prayers, gentle incense, and the quiet reassurance of a kindly priest. Or perhaps you'll simply recognize the quiet power of compassion in your own daily life. How softly spoken words, gentle touches, and reassuring presence can heal far beyond medicine's reach. Now, breathing deeply and slowly, you feel yourself gently drifting onward through the calming currents of history. Ancient temples fade softly into dreams, their quiet chants still whispering gently in your ears, offering calm reassurance as you glide toward deeper, restful sleep, leaving the quiet, incense-infused temple behind you. Softly drift into the gentle daily rhythms of ancient Egyptians tending to their teeth. The moon hangs softly in the sky, casting a dreamy glow over village rooftops, while inside cozy homes, families slowly settle into their soothing bedtime rituals. Imagine yourself stepping softly into one of these homes, its walls warmed by the day's sun, now gently cooling in the quiet evening air. In a softly lit corner, you notice a small shelf lined with neatly arranged tooth cleaning tools. Simple, humble items made from nature carefully selected by Egyptians for their gentle effectiveness. Egyptians cared deeply about dental hygiene, even without the convenience of modern toothbrushes or minty toothpaste. Their daily routines were quiet and practical, thoughtfully designed to prevent toothaches rather than merely treat them afterward. They understood intuitively long before modern dentists that careful prevention often beats cure. On the shelf before you rests a small collection of frayed sticks, neatly cut from soft bristled plants. Egyptians didn't use toothbrushes as you know them today. Instead, they relied gently on nature, choosing soft twigs from trees, like the Salvadora persica, the toothbrush tree, still used widely in parts of the world today. Egyptians chewed the ends of these sticks, gently fraying them softly, until they resembled a primitive toothbrush. You carefully pick one up, noticing how surprisingly soft and pliable the bristles feel. Imagine using such a stick each morning and evening, gently rubbing its frayed end along your teeth and gums, softly dislodging food particles and gently massaging sensitive areas. It might not offer modern minty freshness, but its gentle natural cleaning probably felt surprisingly soothing, quietly effective in preventing irritation and tooth pain. Beside these tooth sticks sits a small bowl of fine powder, delicately ground and softly scented with herbs. Egyptians created gentle tooth powders from ingredients like mint frankincense and dried iris flowers. They dipped damp tooth sticks into these powders, brushing softly to cleanse and freshen their mouths. Frankincense provided gentle antiseptic properties. Mint softly refreshed breath, and iris offered quiet anti-inflammatory effects, a blend both practical and pleasing. You imagine gently dipping a damp tooth stick into this fragrant powder, softly scrubbing your teeth in quiet morning stillness. Egyptians, much like you today, quietly enjoyed fresh breath and clean teeth, even if their methods seemed mildly rustic by modern standards. Historians still debate whether these methods effectively prevented cavities or merely offered gentle comfort, but Egyptians clearly appreciated their quiet routines' calming predictability. To them, dental care was softly embedded into everyday life, a soothing ritual performed thoughtfully and patiently, rather than rushed through hurriedly before bed. Near the bowl of tooth powder, another gentle curiosity catches your eye, a small jar filled with salt crystals. Egyptians occasionally sprinkled salt onto their frayed sticks, using its mildly abrasive properties to quietly remove stubborn buildup. Salt also gently soothed irritated gums, offering quiet relief when teeth became sensitive or painful. Though it sounds slightly unpleasant by today's standards, salt was a quiet, practical staple for ancient dental care. But Egyptians didn't rely solely on frayed sticks and powders. Sometimes they turned gently to mouth rinses, though theirs lacked the bright colors and antiseptic sting of modern mouthwash. Instead, Egyptians favored soft herbal infusions, coriander water dill or chamomile tea gently swished around their mouths, quietly freshening breath and soothing gums. Picture yourself now quietly holding a small clay cup filled with warm chamomile tea, gently swirling the herbal liquid around your mouth. The soft warmth comforts your gums, the tea's subtle floral notes soothing your senses. Chamomile Egyptians believed carried gentle anti-inflammatory properties, perfectly suited for calming sensitive teeth and quieting irritated gums. Nearby, a simple clay jug quietly holds wine, another gentle dental remedy Egyptians appreciated. Wine's alcohol content, mild though it was compared to modern standards, provided a subtle antiseptic effect. Egyptians occasionally rinsed their mouths gently with wine, quietly reducing bacterial growth and soothing minor irritations. Of course, wine's comforting qualities extended beyond mere dental care, as Egyptians surely knew, gently appreciating its broader, soothing benefits. In a corner of the home, a child softly observes her parents' careful rituals, gently imitating their movements with her own small toothstick. Egyptian parents quietly taught their children dental care routines, knowing early habits could quietly prevent later pain. You smile softly, recognizing the gentle wisdom of this timeless practice. Careful prevention, patiently taught, passed gently from generation to generation. These daily routines weren't flashy or dramatic. They were gentle, quiet, unremarkable, yet deeply comforting in their steady predictability. Ancient Egyptians appreciated the subtle power of quiet rituals thoughtfully performed. They understood something still valuable today, that small, consistent care often quietly prevents bigger pains later. You quietly step back outside beneath the gentle moonlight, softly pondering these timeless dental habits. Perhaps tonight, as you gently drift towards sleep, you'll appreciate your own modern dental care a little more deeply. The convenience of toothbrushes, the freshness of toothpaste, or perhaps you'll carry with you a newfound admiration for ancient Egyptians' quiet routines, their gentle reliance on nature, their patient attention to everyday details. As you slowly breathe eyelids, gently growing heavier, you imagine yourself quietly standing in an ancient home toothstick in hand, calmly practicing these simple, soothing rituals. You feel their gentle wisdom softly settling into your consciousness, a quiet reminder that comfort, health, and happiness often lie in the simplest daily actions, gently performed, quietly cherished. Now, feeling softly relaxed and deeply comforted, you let yourself drift further along history's gentle currents. The quiet whispers of ancient tooth-cleaning routines fade gently into dreams, softly carrying you onward toward peaceful, restful sleep. The morning sun now peeks gently over the eastern horizon, brushing golden light across temple walls and waking the Nile's smooth surface with a soft shimmer. You follow that warm light into a corner of history, where one name quietly waits: Hesirah. Not a pharaoh, not a general, but a man who may very well have been Egypt's first dentist, or at least the first one important enough to get a fancy title carved on a tomb wall. You stroll softly through the Saqqara necropolis, stepping carefully between weathered stones and curious shadows, until you find a simple mastaba tomb nestled beneath the warming sky. The limestone is pale smooth in some places, pocked with time in others, but the carvings are still clear. One of them reads with pride, chief of dentists and physician to the king's great house. You smile softly. That's our man, Hesi Ra, the earliest known dental professional tucked into history, not with a scream and a drill, but with respectful titles and soft reverence. Stepping inside the tomb, you're struck by how quiet it is. The air is cool, the walls inscribed with scenes of daily life, and Hesi Ra himself is carved in profile, sitting calmly on a chair brush, in hand, overseeing his duties. Unlike the grandeur of pharaohs' tombs, this one is humble, almost cozy, in its timeless silence. Yet within its walls lies one of the first acknowledgments that dental care mattered and that someone had to be in charge of all those aching teeth. Historians still argue whether Hesi Ra was more physician or more dentist, but based on his title and the era in which he lived around 2600 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Djoser, he clearly had some specialized knowledge of the mouth and its many often annoying discomforts. You imagine Hesi Ra moving through the corridors of the royal palace, not with fanfare or entourage, but with a quiet confidence. Perhaps he carried a satchel of tools, simple handmade instruments of wood, copper, or bone. He might have approached his noble patients, calmly listening first, observing gently before preparing a paste or recommending a poultice. His methods, of course, weren't what you'd expect in a modern dental clinic. No ultrasonic scalers or LED lights. No numbing gel. Instead, he relied on a mixture of herbal wisdom, steady hands, and calm demeanor. He may have advised the use of honey for inflammation or wine-soaked linen for sterilization, or even minor tooth extractions if decay had gone too far. Performed gently, we hope, and probably only when absolutely necessary. You wince slightly at the thought of ancient tooth pulling, but remind yourself that Hesi Ra probably wasn't yanking teeth daily. Egyptians rarely removed teeth unless there was no other option. They focused instead on soothing, preserving, and protecting in ways that were more holistic and, dare we say, gentle. There's also something charming about how the ancient Egyptians viewed health not as a separate sterile science, but as a blend of body, spirit, and social harmony. Hesi Ra's title wasn't just dentist, it was chief of dentists and physician to the king's great house. This suggests that he held responsibility for both dental and general health among the elite, including temple staff and palace dwellers. It also hints that his role had prestige, and with it the pressure to be more than just a healer. He likely had to be a listener, a comforter, a wise advisor, who understood that behind every aching tooth was a person, a priest, a servant, or even a prince trying to get through the day with one less reason to grimace. You softly imagine the kinds of conversations Hesi Ra may have had. Yes, your majesty, the swelling should go down by tomorrow, but try not to chew on the left side tonight. Or, my lady, this honey and onion balm may smell curious, but it works wonders, I promise. And perhaps on quiet days, Hesi-Ra wandered the markets or spoke to temple scribes, exchanging ideas, learning new remedies, or simply observing. He would have been curious, thoughtful, and deeply aware of the pain people rarely talked about but always felt. That's the kind of dentist who would earn a title carved in stone not because he dazzled, but because he soothed. You glance once more at his carved image in the tomb, his posture calm, his hands steady. There's no flashiness to his depiction, just a quiet dignity. It fits somehow. A man who spent his life tending to aching mouths, not with glory, but with the gentle persistence that builds trust. As you step out into the warming light, the breeze rustling softly through palm fronds overhead, you think about how many lives Hesi-Ra must have quietly touched. And even though his treatments wouldn't pass modern regulations, no gloves, no x-rays, no little sink to spit into his presence, still resonates across millennia. Perhaps that's what makes his story so comforting. In a civilization obsessed with eternity, here was a man remembered not for conquering or ruling, but for easing pain, one gentle mouth at a time. And now as you take a deep breath and continue your journey, you carry his story with you. A soft reminder that healing isn't always loud and legacy doesn't always require a crown. The sun now hangs gently overhead, warming the edges of the Nile and casting sleepy reflections on its glassy surface. You continue your quiet walk through time, guided by the hum of daily life in an ancient Egyptian village. But something subtle catches your attention. Not the sounds of chatter or market trade, but the sharp aroma drifting lazily from a shaded stall. Garlic, and beneath it that unmistakable punch of onions. Not exactly a perfume, but here in Egypt, these two pungent bulbs were more than just culinary staples. They were humble heroes in the fight against toothache. You find yourself beside a healer's stand near the market square. It's midday, and the pace is slow. The healer, a woman with sun-kissed skin and steady hands, sorts through bunches of garlic and spring onions, her expression calm and unhurried. She gently crushes a clove between her fingers and raises it to her nose. It's strong, potent, a signal that the bulb is good. Good for what exactly? In this case, good for numbing pain and fighting the silent invaders that creep into neglected teeth. Garlic and onions, though simple, were powerful in ancient Egyptian medicine. They had real bite both in flavor and in function. Egyptians believed these plants carried strong life force energy capable of warding off disease and evil spirits alike. And when your molar was aching, you wanted all the help you could get. The healer offers you a sample, just a sliver of crushed garlic on a reed-thin splinter of wood. You pretend to nibble politely, and then quickly decide it's best to observe rather than taste. The aroma alone is enough to cleanse your sinuses and perhaps your social life for the next 3 days. Still, there's something strangely comforting about garlic's sharpness. It speaks of strength, resilience, the kind of boldness you might need when trying to calm an irritated gum with nothing but household ingredients. She begins preparing a treatment. Finely chopped garlic, softened in warm oil, carefully applied to a scrap of linen. This linen compress will be gently placed along the gum line near the aching tooth. The warmth of the oil helps soothe while the garlic's natural compounds get to work. Alicin released when garlic is crushed has genuine antibacterial properties Today, modern science nods in agreement, though it would probably offer a numbing gel instead of a garlic poultice. But who are we to judge the classics? The onion, meanwhile, takes a more subtle role. Its juice, equally pungent but slightly sweeter, was sometimes squeezed into aching mouths to fight infection. It also worked well when mashed into a paste combined with fig or honey and placed directly on the sore spot. The combination might sound like a recipe for a sandwich gone horribly wrong, but in the context of ancient Egyptian medicine, it was considered both wise and effective. Historians still debate how much of the garlic and onion treatment actually worked versus how much was simply spicy optimism. But the Egyptians clearly believed in it. Some even carried slices of garlic in small pouches around their necks, believing its essence repelled tooth demons. Whether it worked or not, it probably repelled quite a few social interactions too. You step away from the stall, still catching the tang of garlic in the air. The scent seems to follow you as you wander through a nearby garden where medicinal herbs grow quietly under the sun. Dill, coriander, fennel. They were all used for various ailments, but garlic and onion were the workhorses, the tough love of ancient herbalism. In one corner of the garden, a young apprentice healer practices mixing a garlic-onion blend with honey, creating a smooth golden paste. He dabs it onto a small strip of papyrus, rolls it into a spiral, and tucks it gently into a clay pot to age. Better after 3 days, he whispers, almost like he's talking about a fine wine. You smile. Even here, time improves flavor and maybe healing. You imagine yourself with a toothache back then. Maybe you would have winced at the intensity of the garlic treatment. Maybe you'd have pleaded for something gentler, perhaps a chamomile rinse or an amulet. But when the pain got bad enough and nothing else worked, you'd probably find yourself nodding to the healer and holding out your hand for that garlicky linen compress, desperate for relief. And in that moment, with the sting setting in and your eyes watering slightly, you might even whisper a thank you, because sometimes comfort doesn't come sweetly. Sometimes it arrives with a kick and a pungent punch. As the sun begins to dip again, softening the air and mellowing the colors around you, you reflect on the strength it took to face pain without modern tools. To meet discomfort head-on with kitchen ingredients, prayers, and a little faith. Garlic and onions weren't glamorous, but they worked. Or at least they helped people feel like they were doing something, anything, to reclaim peace from a throbbing nerve. And tonight, as you slowly drift deeper into sleep, you might carry that image with you. The calm healer, the warm compress, the quiet courage of ancient people, using what they had, trusting that even the sharpest flavors might one day fade into comfort. The sun now slips quietly behind the date palms, painting the Nile's surface with long amber streaks. A cooler breeze picks up soft and comforting, and you find yourself drawn toward a quieter, more reflective place, an archaeological site where modern minds gently sift through ancient bones to uncover forgotten truths. Tonight, you're not just a sleepy traveler, but a gentle observer of scientific curiosity. Before you lies a collection of skulls, carefully laid out on linen-covered tables under a softly glowing canvas tent. Each skull once belonged to someone who smiled, laughed, ate, and yes, likely winced at a sudden flash of tooth pain. And now, thousands of years later, these silent witnesses still whisper stories through the condition of their teeth. Archaeologists and paleopathologists have long studied ancient Egyptian teeth to reconstruct not only what they ate, but how they lived and suffered. You stand beside one researcher, a woman with quiet eyes and steady hands, as she delicately examines the molars of a 3,000-year-old skeleton. "Sand in the bread," she says softly, almost to herself. That's what did it, and she's right. One of the gentle ironies of ancient Egypt's proud bread-making tradition is that it was quite literally grinding people's teeth down. The stone tools used to crush and grind grains often left behind tiny bits of grit. And since bread was a staple consumed daily, with nearly every meal the grit slowly, patiently wore down. Enamel leading to cracks, infections, and the kind of dull ache that ancient people simply had to endure. You imagine it now, biting into what looked like a perfectly fine loaf, only to wince as the gritty crunch reminded you that your favorite food was slowly destroying your smile. There's something both humbling and darkly funny in that. The staff of life doubling as a dental hazard. The researcher points gently to another skull, this one with a large abscess clearly visible along the jawline. It's the kind of infection that would have caused significant pain, and yet this person lived long enough for the bone around it to show signs of healing, meaning they endured. They probably visited a healer, tried an herbal remedy, prayed to Isis, or maybe just powered through gritting their teeth. Pun absolutely intended. Historians still debate just how aware Egyptians were of the long-term damage caused by their diet. Some suggest they simply accepted it as part of life. Others argue that tooth pain was serious enough to warrant all those charm spells and medical scrolls we've wandered through so far. What's especially fascinating is that despite all the wear and tear, tooth decay wasn't actually that common. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient Egyptians had plenty of dental trauma, cracks, infections, and erosion, but relatively few cavities. The reason their diet, while tough on enamel, was relatively low in sugar. So while their teeth might have worn down from sand and stone, they weren't rotting from candy or cola. It's a small silver lining in the otherwise tooth-grinding daily routine. You glance around the tent. Dozens of skulls line the tables, each one offering its own gentle clue. A teenager with perfectly even teeth, perhaps the envy of her peers. An older man missing several molars, his remaining teeth smoothed down like river stones. A young woman with a visible dental tool mark, evidence perhaps of early intervention by a skilled hand. And then your eyes settle on something remarkable. A mummy still wrapped in faded linen with a tiny amulet tucked beneath the jaw. You feel a chill, not of fear, but of recognition. Could this have been a toothache charm? A small eye of Horus, placed lovingly during burial to protect her in the afterlife from the same pain she bore in life? That one detail softens everything. In a civilization obsessed with the afterlife, even your dental troubles followed you into eternity. Egyptians prepared for that too, tucking in tokens of comfort, gentle protection against phantom pains that might echo beyond death. You step outside the tent now, the night fully enveloping the dig site stars, shimmering like ancient eyes above. The Nile laps softly in the distance. In your mind, those skulls don't feel like grim remains. They feel like stories. Each tooth a timeline. Each worn incisor a sigh. Each healed abscess a small miracle of survival. And perhaps the most comforting thought of all, despite the pain, despite the lack of modern tools, Egyptians endured with grace. They found ways to soothe themselves with herbs, prayers, powders, and simple persistence. They worked with what they had trusted, in what they believed, and did their best to meet each new day with a little less pain. As you breathe deeply beneath the stars, the cool air wrapping gently around you, you feel the presence of those ancient souls. Not haunting, but quietly encouraging, reminding you that discomfort is part of the journey, but so is resilience, so is care, so is the gentle human instinct to soothe and heal. And with that thought, you drift onward deeper into history, deeper into rest, the gentle ache of old stories becoming part of your own slow, soothing dream. You awaken gently in the soft hush of a new morning, not with a jolt or a start, but with the ease of one who has slept beside the Nile for lifetimes. The wind carries a light rustle of palm fronds overhead, and just beyond the reeds, you hear the low murmur of distant voices, familiar, cheerful, unhurried. Today we turn to something a little unexpected: humor. Yes, even in the ancient world of toothaches and temple chants, there was room for a gentle chuckle, because, as it turns out, ancient Egyptians, those mighty pyramid builders and poetic scribes, had a sense of humor about their teeth. And somehow knowing that makes them feel even more human. As you wander into the marketplace, early morning sun warming the stones underfoot, you pass a wall painted with faded hieroglyphs. At first glance, they seem typical prayers to Thoth, depictions of offerings, maybe a chicken or two. But look closer. One tiny panel depicts a man holding his cheek, eyes comically wide, a scribe beside him, laughing softly behind a scroll. It's not a grand royal mural, it's graffiti. Ancient, delightful graffiti. Scholars have found more than one example of this quiet mischief in tombs and temples. Little drawings carved with care but laced with a kind of subtle sarcasm. One popular image shows a monkey impersonating a dentist, holding a pestle and grinning. Another depicts a man offering a basket of onions and garlic to the gods, not for a feast, but presumably to bargain his way out of dental misery. It's comforting, isn't it? That even 3,000 years ago, people made jokes about their teeth. That while priests prayed and healers ground herbs, someone was snickering behind a wall, poking fun at the sheer inconvenience of an aching molar. You find yourself smiling as you pass a pottery shop. The vendor, spotting your amused expression, lifts a small clay figurine, an exaggerated head with puffed cheeks and a clearly aching tooth. It's an amulet, but also a joke, a piece of wearable sarcasm. Egyptians didn't just treat toothaches, they mocked them just a little to take away their power. Humor was subtle in Egypt, gentle, observational, dry. There are even stories in old papyri of court jesters mimicking noblemen with swollen cheeks, or a servant faking a dramatic limp to imply he had bitten down on Ra's own sunbeam. A creative excuse to skip temple duty, possibly a way to make the pharaoh chuckle, likely. Historians still debate whether these moments were meant as full-on comedy or simply soft levity in a culture that, while serious in its devotion and rituals, knew life was never entirely free of absurdity. And toothaches, well, those were universal, equalizing. Even pharaohs couldn't escape them, and that alone might have made the royal court a bit more relaxed when someone snuck in a joke about the gods trying to escape through your gums. You stroll now through a small school courtyard where young scribes in training practice their glyphs on pottery shards. One boy scrawls a sentence tongue between his teeth in focus. You lean closer. If you chew too fast, the crocodile will visit your molars. A cautionary fable or a playground joke? Maybe both. Ancient Egyptians loved stories that taught lessons, often using humor to soften the blow. One old tale involves a lazy farmer who ignored his dentist's advice, and legend has it woke up with his teeth traded out for pebbles. Harsh, maybe. Memorable, definitely. You can imagine parents repeating the story at bedtime, half to scare, half to entertain. Even medical papyri have moments of unintended humor. In one scroll, a healer suggests whispering the name of a tooth demon while chewing coriander. If the demon screams and flees, the remedy worked. If not, try again after soaking your feet in beer. Modern readers may smile, but there's something quietly reassuring in knowing ancient prescriptions came with second chances and maybe a beer. These small, subtle bits of levity helped Egyptians cope with the realities of daily discomfort. When remedies failed, when spells fizzled, humor remained. And often that was enough to keep going, to chew another day, to laugh even through the ache. As the marketplace grows livelier, you pause beside a mural depicting a banquet. Amid the tables, one guest is caught mid-bite, face contorted in surprise. A scribe beside him pens something rapidly, perhaps noting the moment, or perhaps sketching another comedic glyph. Egyptians didn't document embarrassment to shame. They documented it because it was real. And real things, even uncomfortable ones, deserve to be remembered. You take a slow breath, feeling the warm breeze on your skin. It's oddly comforting to know the ancients weren't above the occasional smirk, that they found ways to gently laugh at themselves, that they let the ache have a name and then made fun of it. So if you've ever tried to pretend your dental pain was no big deal, if you've ever laughed it off to avoid groaning, you're in excellent company. You're sharing a long, very human tradition of making light where it hurts. As the sky deepens toward evening and your steps soften once more, you carry with you those quiet chuckles, those clay figurines, those scribbled warnings. The gentle humor of the ancients settles into your bones, like warm tea, soothing, human, and endlessly familiar. The sun is lower now, casting long, golden shadows over palace walls, carved in quiet grandeur. Your feet take you almost instinctively toward the heart of the kingdom, not to the battlefield or the throne room, but to the quieter corners of royal life, where even pharaohs were not immune to the age-old enemy toothache. Tonight you find yourself wandering the cool inner courtyards of a royal residence, its sandstone columns glowing amber in the last light of day. The palace is unusually still. Servants move softly across tiled walkways. Musicians tune their lyres in hushed tones. And behind a sheer curtain, you catch the briefest glimpse of a royal hand pressed gently to a cheek. Toothache doesn't care about titles, and ancient Egyptian royalty, for all their divine status, weren't spared the throbbing ache of infected molars or the dull pressure of worn-down enamel. Inside a royal chamber, incense curls upward in slow spirals. A physician dressed in clean linen, his eyes calm and practiced, kneels before a reclining pharaoh. He does not panic, does not promise instant relief. Instead, he speaks softly, listing the options: a poultice of garlic and wine, a honey-based balm, applied before the evening meal, or perhaps a rare ointment imported at great cost from Nubia. Pharaoh nods faintly, his brow furrowed, not from the weight of empire, but from the pressing throb near his back tooth. He gestures to the honey mixture. A servant steps forward carrying a small ivory tray upon which rests a linen-wrapped compress. It is placed gently on the pharaoh's cheek. The room sighs with the quiet hope of relief. You pause, considering the scene. Royal remedies, while more luxurious in packaging, weren't radically different from those used by villagers. What set them apart was access to rare ingredients, skilled healers, and imported herbs. And of course, a certain expectation of discretion. After all, a pharaoh groaning in pain did not fit well with the image of divine rulership. But pain is a great equalizer. And behind the scenes, royal physicians had to be both gentle and inventive. One scroll from the medical archive at Karnak Temple describes a blend of crushed carob pods, fig sap, and a hint of myrrh applied with a swan feather brush to the affected area. Whether it worked or simply smelled expensive is unclear, but the recipe alone suggests the level of detail and care given to elite patients. Historians still debate whether royal toothaches were treated with more urgency than other ailments. Some argue that since the pharaoh was considered semi-divine, any sign of physical weakness, including something as mundane as a dental issue, had to be concealed or spiritualized. Others believe court physicians took great pride in easing their ruler's pain, seeing it as both duty and honor. You step softly through the cool marble halls, imagining the sounds of whispered consultations, the clinking of copper tools, the muted grinding of spices behind silk screens. Everything, even the pain, is veiled in softness here. Even the screams, if they ever came, were likely muffled behind thick curtains and burning frankincense. But not all royal remedies were gentle. When a pharaoh's patience wore thin or the pain became too great, there were bolder options. One preserved medical papyrus suggests that in extreme cases, an infected tooth might be removed using a hooked tool. While the patient was under the influence of heavily fermented date wine, essentially ancient anesthesia, whether it worked is questionable. Whether it was pleasant, highly unlikely. Still, there's a certain romance to imagining a pharaoh braving such a treatment, gripping the arms of his gilded chair, eyes locked on a statue of Thoth for comfort, as a physician did what he had to do. Royal or not, a bad tooth has no sympathy. Not all pharaohs suffered in silence. One small carving in a private tomb, possibly depicting Amenhotep III, shows the king with slightly puffed cheeks and downturned lips. Some scholars suggest it was a subtle nod to dental suffering. Others think it may have simply reflected the bloating of old age. But once you've spent this long in the company of Egyptian toothaches, it's hard not to see it for what it probably was, a wince in stone. In the palace gardens, a priest walks quietly, murmuring protective verses. He carries with him a satchel of charms, amulets meant to protect the pharaoh from future pain. Perhaps one will be placed beneath the royal pillow tonight next to a small jar of clove oil and a folded linen cloth scented with lotus. It's all very human. The power, the protocol, the gilded surroundings, and in the middle of it a single tooth, quietly reminding a king that no one, not even a son of Ra, can escape the body's simple truths. You step away from the palace now, the night air cooler, the Nile's breeze soft against your skin. You imagine the pharaoh sleeping at last, the pain eased for now, the physician resting nearby scrolls, open planning tomorrow's adjustments, perhaps a new mixture, perhaps simply more rest. And as you walk, you carry that image with you, not one of power or perfection, but of shared vulnerability, a reminder that we are all, in the end, merely human, capable of awe, of laughter, of devotion, and of an occasional, quietly humbling toothache. The moon is high now, casting a silvery hush across the land, and your footsteps bring you to the edge of the village where medicine meets mystery in its most curious form. Tonight we enter one of the more peculiar corners of ancient Egyptian dental care, a place where mice were more than just grain thieves and temple pests. They were somehow part of the cure. Yes, mice. You find yourself approaching the home of a healer, not a grand temple priest or a palace physician, but a local remedy woman known for her curious methods. Her garden is wild and fragrant. Bundles of herbs hang from rafters. Bowls of dried roots line the ledge, and nestled beside them, to your quiet surprise, a clay cage where two small mice rest beneath a linen cloth. She greets you with a nod, eyes sharp and knowing. You're not here to question, only to observe, and what you're about to witness is one of the stranger, yet oddly sincere, rituals in the Egyptian quest for toothache relief. The ancient Egyptians believed in sympathetic magic, using something connected to a problem to draw it out or diminish it. In this case, mice, those small and ever-present creatures, were believed to possess a certain energy that could, if applied properly, transfer pain away from the human body. So what does that mean in practice? The healer takes one of the mice gently, reverently, as though it were a sacred offering. She crushes it into a poultice with herbs and wine. Yes, you read that right. It is not a ritual for the faint-hearted, and certainly not one that would pass any kind of modern ethical standard. But in the ancient world, desperation met belief in extraordinary ways. The mouse paste was then applied directly to the site of pain. You may flinch, but remember, this was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was desperation wrapped in sacred logic. The pain was real, the remedies were few, and the mouse, earthy, calm, and abundant, offered itself as a kind of mystical bridge between suffering and healing. Historians still debate the origin of this practice. Some say it may have come from earlier desert cultures where animal parts were believed to carry medicinal properties. Others see it as part of a broader system of magical thinking where everything in nature had a purpose, even the humblest mouse. Still, others suspect it was more symbolic than literal. Perhaps only the image of the mouse was used, not the animal itself. Regardless, the presence of mouse-based remedies appears in several ancient medical texts. One fragment discovered near Thebes describes a boiled mouse in beer, cooled and sipped before sleep. Another recommends mouse marrow mixed with thyme and frankincense as a compress for persistent dental inflammation. You can almost hear the skeptical scribes muttering as they copied these recipes, quills scratching with both duty and disbelief. And yet there they are, inked in hieroglyphs passed down for generations, suggesting they were at least respected enough to record. The healer you're watching now offers a less dramatic version of the mouse cure. She burns mouse bones over incense and mixes the ash with honey and wine, applying it gently to a patient's cheek. The symbolism she explains softly is what matters. The transformation, the transference of pain. Whether or not the ingredients held medical value, the ritual gave people a sense of control, and sometimes that alone was enough to help the healing begin. It's not so different from modern placebos, is it? The body responds not only to medicine, but to belief, to the sense that something is being done, something is changing, something is easing the suffering. And it wasn't always mice. Sometimes the ritual called for a bit of donkey fat or powdered ostrich shell or even mold scraped from old bread, foreshadowing, interestingly, the discovery of penicillin thousands of years later. Egyptians didn't need microscopes to sense that certain things helped. They felt it, noticed it, passed it down. As the patient, an elderly man with a weary smile, leans back, the healer applies the poultice and begins to chant softly. It's a lullaby more than a spell, barely above a whisper. The man closes his eyes, the fire flickers. Outside, the Nile sings its eternal song. You sit in the corner, wrapped in the scent of frankincense and crushed herbs, feeling strangely moved. There's no modern comfort here, no scientific certainty, and yet the care is palpable. The ritual is slow, respectful, quiet. The pain, if not erased, is acknowledged, soothed, shared. And that perhaps is what these ancient cures were really about. Not the ingredients alone, but the process, the community, the feeling of being seen in one's suffering and gently offered something, anything that might help. You step outside once more, the stars bright and endless above you. In the distance, the healer's chant still hums through the air, carrying with it the oldest kind of hope that no pain is permanent and no comfort too small. So the next time you dismiss an old folk remedy as nonsense, pause. Somewhere long ago, someone with a toothache tried something unusual, not because they were foolish, but because they were human, because they needed relief and belief and maybe even a little magic. You wander onward now, the Nile a soft ribbon beside you, the stars thick and velvety overhead. The world feels quieter, deeper, almost sacred. And just as you think this journey through Egypt's gentle approach to toothaches has shown you every remedy you find yourself, arriving at a threshold unlike any other. It's not a temple or a healer's hut. It's something far more mysterious. A dream chamber. You step inside and the atmosphere shifts. The air here is heavier, cool, and fragrant with myrrh and lotus. Stone walls absorb every sound. The room is dim, lit only by the flicker of an oil lamp and the faint shimmer of moonlight through a high window. You are in one of ancient Egypt's most enigmatic spaces, a sleep temple. Sleep temples, also known as incubation chambers, were sacred spaces where patients sought healing through dreams Egyptians believed that in this altered state, the gods could whisper cures, reveal causes of ailments, or gently lift the burden of physical pain. And yes, even toothaches, that most ordinary of torments, were thought to be addressed this way. You lie down on a woven mat, your head cradled by a rolled linen pillow, and listen as a priestess moves softly through the room. She burns a pinch of sweet-smelling herbs, murmurs an invocation to Serket, goddess of healing and dream guidance, and places an amulet of the moon beside your hand. Sleep now, she says gently. The cure will come when your breath deepens and your heart quiets. And so you close your eyes. This wasn't seen as fantasy or folklore. It was a deeply integrated part of ancient Egyptian medicine. When physical remedies failed, when herbs soothed but did not solve many, turned inward to the dream, to the place where the soul could meet the divine. Historians still debate how much of this dream incubation was symbolic and how much was believed to be literal healing. Some scholars suggest the dreams themselves were less important than the rest, and quiet the experience provided. Others argue that dreams were recorded by temple priests and interpreted with seriousness as if they were diagnostic reports from the gods themselves. One ancient scroll speaks of a man who entered the dream chamber with pain in the third molar heat rising to the eye. He emerged the next day claiming he had spoken with Imhotep, the god physician, who instructed him to chew fennel seeds at dawn. He followed the dream, and as the record notes, his face was no longer twisted in agony. Whether the fennel worked or the dream soothed his spirit, no one can say for certain, but the story survived. You imagine that man now waking in the pre-dawn hush, the pain dimmer, his resolve stronger, clutching his dream like a prescription. And you wonder how many quiet souls over the centuries lay in this very chamber, asking their subconscious or something greater for relief. Even today, modern science acknowledges the strange powers of sleep, how the brain relaxed and unguarded can shift, pain perception, reduce anxiety, promote healing. The ancient Egyptians may not have known the neurology, but they felt the truth of it. A well-timed dream could change everything. The priestess returns as you drift between sleep and memory. She places a small dish of warm honey water by your bedside, not to drink, but for the scent. Honey again, ever present. A gentle bridge between body and spirit. A reminder of sweetness, even in suffering. She sits beside you now, not to speak, but to listen. Egyptians believed the gods sent dreams in symbols. So upon waking, patients were encouraged to describe everything: the color of the sky, the animals they met, the words they heard. Priests would then interpret, teasing out meanings with care, never dismissing even the smallest detail. One recorded dream from a temple in Abydos tells of a woman who dreamed her tooth floated out of her mouth and was carried away by a bird. The priest interpreted this as a sign of relief. To come the bird symbolizing freedom, the floating tooth, a soft release of pain. 3 days later, the scroll notes she was smiling again. Whether these healings were psychosomatic, spiritual, or simply the result of good timing, they remind us of something vital, that pain, no matter how persistent, need not be permanent. That even when remedies fail, the act of being held, heard, and honored in one's suffering is its own form of medicine. You remain in the dream chamber, heart slow breath, deep comforted, not by pills or procedures, but by the simple, profound belief that healing comes in many forms. Some are swallowed, some are whispered, and some come to you when you're finally still enough to listen. Tonight, as your own body lies beneath blankets and the real world slips further away, let this be your sleep temple. Let the silence carry you. Let your mind wander into the calm. No more remedies, no more routines, just breath shadow and soft trust. Whatever pain you carry, physical or otherwise, know that it too may float away, carried softly by some unseen bird on the wings of sleep and centuries of quiet hope. As the stars hold their places high above Egypt, unmoved by time, you slowly step back out from the dream chamber. The air feels different now, lighter somehow, not because the pain has gone entirely, but because your understanding of it has changed. You've seen the rituals, the remedies, the warmth, and the strange beauty of how Egyptians cared for their discomforts. And yet one question still lingers like incense on the air. Did any of this actually work? Tonight you join a circle of modern minds, a quiet room far from the Nile filled with scholars, hunched over papyrus fragments, dental casts, and stone mortars. They sit surrounded by the whispers of the past, carefully debating the same question you've been carrying in your chest since this journey began. Did the ancient Egyptian approach to toothaches help? The answer, whispered with humility and a touch of awe, is maybe. Sometimes, in ways we're only beginning to appreciate. Historians and scientists agree on one thing. Ancient Egyptians suffered from a great deal of dental wear. The sand in their bread, the coarseness of their diet, the lack of modern tools, it all contributed to enamel erosion and chronic pain. Their bones, their skulls, their molars tell the tale with silent persistence, but they also tell another story, one of surprising resilience. Many skeletons show signs of healed abscesses, inflammation that subsided, bone that regrew. These people didn't just endure, they recovered. One explanation is that Egyptian remedies, while limited, offered real antimicrobial benefits. Honey, long used for soothing wounds, kills bacteria. Garlic contains allicin, a compound still studied today for its healing effects. Onion, coriander, frankincense. These aren't just kitchen herbs, they're gentle warriors against infection. You lean in, watching a scientist gently apply honey to a sample of bacteria in a lab dish. Hours later, the growth has slowed. The evidence is small but promising, like a candle flickering in a very old room. And yet, even with these hopeful signs, there's another layer to the debate, one more elusive. Did the Egyptians believe the remedies worked because they felt something change? Or because they needed to? The placebo effect, as modern medicine calls it, isn't fake healing. It's belief turned into biology. The act of being seen, cared for, touched with intent and gentleness that alone can ease suffering. And ancient Egyptians understood this on a deep, quiet level. Their rituals were slow, deliberate, filled with meaning. They allowed time for the body to settle and the spirit to soften. So perhaps the question isn't, did it work, but what kind of working do we mean? If a tooth still ached, but a prayer calmed the patient, was that a failure? Or was that, in its own quiet way, success? You step back into memory, now tracing your way through all the moments you've witnessed the scribe dipping his pen into black ink, the healer mixing honey and cumin, the priest whispering in the candlelit temple, the child brushing her teeth with a frayed stick, the artisan carving a tiny amulet of turquoise, the royal physician kneeling by a pharaoh's chair, the old man sipping wine infused with coriander and hope. They weren't fumbling in ignorance. They were doing their best with what they had, what they knew, what they hoped for. And in some ways, weren't they miles ahead of us? They knew the value of stillness, of turning healing into ritual, of folding suffering into a shared rhythm. They knew that the ache in a tooth is also an ache in the soul and that comfort must address both. Historians still argue. Of course they do. That's their job. But here in the space between facts and feelings, between science and scent, a deeper truth curls like smoke from an old lamp. The Egyptians may not have always cured pain, but they comforted it with grace, with reverence, with an open palm. As the scholars dim their lights and close their scrolls, you return once more to the world of the Nile. The wind carries the distant murmur of a healing song. A woman presses a warm compress to her cheek. A father hands his child a freshly cut toothstick. A dreamer lays down beneath the stars, waiting for a whisper from the gods. And through it all, you begin to understand not just the history of ancient dental care, but the quiet strength it took to believe in healing long before certainty existed. That, perhaps, is what makes the Egyptians unforgettable. They turned pain into poetry, discomfort into ceremony, and somewhere between the honey and the hieroglyphs, they found a kind of peace. Tonight you carry that with you, not as knowledge, but as feeling, as quiet warmth, as something ancient and soft that lives now in your breath. The stars now fade softly into the horizon as the first hints of dawn stir across the Nile, delicate and slow like ink, dissolving in warm water. Your journey through Egypt's gentle history of toothaches draws to a close, not with drama or climax, but with the same quiet cadence that's guided you here all along. You find yourself once again in a modest village courtyard, the same kind you passed at the beginning of this long, soothing wander through time. A mother rises early, grinding herbs before her children wake. A man stretches his back beside a cooking fire, swishing warm water infused with fennel. The hum of life resumes gentle, predictable, and deeply rooted in centuries of repetition. And you begin to see that healing wasn't something dramatic in ancient Egypt. It was woven into daily life. Not a last resort, but a ritual, a rhythm, a soft morning task, no different from lighting a lamp or feeding a goat. You pass an old woman sitting with her granddaughter beneath the shade of a fig tree. She's telling her stories about temples and dreams and the time she lost a tooth, chewing too quickly on roasted barley. The girl laughs the kind of laugh that ripples into the leaves above, and you realize this is medicine too. Laughter, memory, connection, all soft salves for the invisible aches that no garlic clove can touch. In a way, this moment is the true culmination of everything you've learned. The frayed toothbrushes, the honey pastes, the chants in the temple air, the sleep temple visions, the priest's touch, the mouse poultices, the warm wine, the frankincense, the jokes, the bone, the prayer, the patient waiting. Each of these things alone might be seen as primitive. Together they form a tender worldview that pain, though inevitable, is not unmanageable. That small, thoughtful gestures can soothe far more than they appear to, and that the spirit must be treated just as much as the tooth. Historians still debate what ancient Egyptian medicine achieved, but they all agree on one thing. It was consistent, it was compassionate, and it was deeply human. And isn't that what we still seek now in waiting rooms and pharmacies, in long nights and tired eyes? Not just solutions, but softness. The sun begins to warm the temple stones. Light creeps into tombs and kitchens alike. You walk past one final mural, a painted healer kneeling before a patient, hands outstretched, not in triumph, but in offering. No lightning bolts, no divine miracles, just presence, care, the willingness to stay with someone in their discomfort quietly until it shifts. And you wonder, is that not the oldest medicine of all? You've come a long way from the ancient scrolls and whispering reed pens to the poultices of mouse and honey, the frank laugh of a child, the sigh of a pharaoh, the prayers of the night. And now before the day fully claims you, you step back, leaving the land of the Nile gently behind. But wait, there's still something more. A final gift from this long, sleepy journey, the understanding that you too can be a healer, not with herbs or amulets, but with attention, with gentleness, with a whispered, "I'm here." Let that truth settle deep into you now, a warmth behind your ribs, a balm behind your own clenched teeth. There's no rush, you've got time. Breathe in slowly, exhale deeper. Let your jaw soften. Unclench your thoughts. There. That's better. And now let yourself truly rest. There's no need to remember the herbs or the temples or the names. They've done their work. The journey has ended not with a loud goodbye, but with a gentle fading like incense drifting through open doors. The Nile is still there somewhere behind your mind's eye, whispering softly against its banks. The voices of healers and scribes, of priests and grandmothers are no longer speaking, but humming low and steady. They are not asking you to think, only to rest, to receive. There's nothing left to solve tonight. No ache to fix. No memory to unpack, just the soft weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath, and the distant echo of stories passed gently from one generation to the next. You have wandered far not through conflict or chaos, but through kindness, through patience, through centuries of people who, just like you, tried their best to make pain bearable and life beautiful. So lie back now. Close your eyes. Let your shoulders sink. Let your thoughts dissolve into shadow. You are safe. You are still. You are held. And whatever tomorrow brings, whether it's a new challenge or a fresh ache, you'll meet it with the quiet strength of those who came before you. Sleep now. You're home.